a demo on hollow vessels might be certainly fun to do, and I really enjoy making hollow vessels. I wanted to start off with just a story, actually, with 20 pictures. And one, just a sec. I don't know if we could. This is a story about an opportunity to make a piece, a special piece for two guys that sent an email looking for somebody that might take a piece of their special wood and produce something that would be memorable for them. And so I went up to their house in Wake Forest, and sure enough, a tornado had ripped through their property, and these two guys were in the process of rebuilding their house. It actually destroyed half of their house. And they were interested in preserving, getting something from the downed trees. This particular cedar log was part of a tree that had been in a cluster of trees for 60, 70 years on the family homestead. And looking at it, they said, well, could you make something that would be interesting? And I said, well, I would like that opportunity. So I brought this home, and initially I thought probably a tall, one-of-a-kind hollow vessel, maybe a 20-inch, 22-inch hollow vessel, because that's some real long boring bars and other heavy equipment that I could probably do a real tall hollow vessel. So, and I thought with the voids, the inclusions, if you put the top of the piece here, you get some nice inclusions going down. So I agreed to do that, and I was really excited about it because I really enjoy making a piece that's going to be special for somebody. So I brought it home and assessed it, and I identified the top and the bottom. Normally, to do a hollow vessel, I'll do it between 2 points. I'll do it on a just a spur center, a spur drive center, and I'll just pinch it between 2 points. So that's just what I did there. This is the 1917 Oliver that Glenn mentioned, and it swings 24 inches and can take a heavy piece of wood. It's a 5 horsepower motor. And so I mounted it, and I thought, well, I'm going to see what I get, basically where are the inclusions. So I started rounding it, and you can go to the next one. And little by little, it just came into round. And because at this point I wasn't sure if I could even produce a hollow vessel, maybe it'd just be a tall open form.
So is that cedar?
That's cedar. And cedar is really soft and tough, fairly challenging to work with because it tears away. And so I've identified the top, and I still have the bottom. You go to the next one.
Sorry?
It's going to blow up.
And I thought, well, with this size of piece, I'll need to use a faceplate. So I have a large, heavy faceplate, so I decided to screw 2.5-inch lag screws into the base with a heavy faceplate and remount it on the lathe once it was round, still using the tailstock to support it. And I began to just shape it, basic shape of a hollow vessel. I wanted to capture some of the sapwood, and I knew when I began to hollow it, I'm going to look for maybe a 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch thickness all the way down. And when you're going to hollow this, you're actually going to be able to see through that, see through the piece, just like you have there. That's a cedar. This is not the same piece, but you just have some little windows into the piece, which I think are kind of interesting.
Well, give me a second, jeez.
What's that?
It's fine. By the time the camera found you, you were walking away with it.
Sorry. Anyway, so I was excited. I thought, hey, I'm going to get a piece out of this. So we can go to the next one. And I began to hollow it. Basic tool for hollowing. I didn't use the big boring bars or anything. I just used one of Al Basham's signature bars. Basically, it just prevents it from torquing and gives you more stability. And I just began going in to try to get the depth of the piece. And so I got down where I wanted to.
Am I going ahead?
The next one. And waxed it. Normally, I'll get it rough to 1 inch thick and wax it with a paraffin wax or anchor seal. And there it's an inch thick with a heavy base. The faceplate's still screwed into it. I'll leave the faceplate on until I'm done with it. So I have 5 or 6 of these heavy faceplates. I'll just leave the faceplate on there. So at that point, I set it aside to dry, and that's the wax on the surface. So after it's dry, I use a little a moisture meter. This is a little mini ligno. I'd recommend it for anyone if you want to really get a piece that doesn't move at all in the final turning. You want your moisture to be around 6%, probably 6 to 8%. Naturally, it'll get down to about 12%, just air dry like that. And Steve talked about different ways to dry last month. I just use a refrigerator with a light bulb in the bottom, similar to Steve's, and I just, over 2 days, it'll bring it down from 12% to 6%, it's ready to finish. So air dry to 12%, force dry down to 6%, back on the lathe, and now I'm going for it. I'm gonna take it down thin on the inside. I'm gonna finish the outside first, establish the base, then I'm gonna get it real thin all the way to the bottom, so it's balanced.
Did you wax the inside?
Don't, hold on, sorry. What's that?
Did you wax the inside?
No, I wax the outside so it dries from the inside. Basically, I just want to slow the drying down. And there are different ways to slow the drying down. I've had pretty good luck with wax. Some guys use wet chips or in a paper bag, or you can actually put it in a box to just keep the airflow from messing with it. So anyway, at this point I was pretty excited because I could see the finished shape, and I spent a lot of time on this so far. And now I'm working on the inside, and I got down, and it was really very close to what I wanted, but there was a nub at the very base, 22 inches at the base. So, and I could not get it to cut. I had this inserted all the way, and this was on the tool rest. This was on the tool rest right here. I had it inserted all the way, and it was really unstable. And it kept wobbling. I couldn't get that little nub to cut. Not that it really mattered. Thanks. I tried to get it. Just psychologically, I wanted to get it to be a nice, smooth base. Inside, you couldn't even see it. And I thought, well, I'll just turn the lathe up. So I have to change the belts on this big lathe. So I changed the belts, and it began spinning really fast. So I thought, I'm just going to take a couple of light cuts, and I'm going to take that nub out just to get that point right at the base curve. Because I knew when I'm going to work on that mass at the bottom, I'm going to need that to go down a little further. I didn't want a heavy bottom on it, because when you pick up a piece and it's got a heavy bottom, it doesn't feel right. I like it to be balanced, and I don't know, just feel right. So I turned up the speed, and I thought, this could be risky, because if this, at that speed, my old lathe, it either goes kind of medium or really fast. There's no variable speed on this thing. So I thought, I'll risk it, because I want to get that nub off. I don't know why. So I turned the speed up, and I started getting some nice cuts. And I thought, hey, this is good. And I start, come back a little more confident, loosen up my grip a little bit. And this is all right. I'm going to go and get a little thinner down at the bottom. And I'm actually straddled the lathe. I'm sitting on the lathe. This is I-beams, it's 12 feet long. I'm sitting on the lathe, and I'm just doing this very carefully.
Do you have a face shield on?
Yeah, I had a face shield. I've learned to use a face shield. So anyway, all of a sudden, I didn't expect it, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. My chisel went woo, 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 boom, and flew out, and knocked me off the lathe on my back. And I thought, I have just destroyed the piece that these guys really wanted, and I wanted to make a nice piece for these couple of guys. So anyway, it blew apart. I was really discouraged. So I just sat down, and I said, what am I going to do with this? So I thought, is there any possible way to put this back together? And so I started looking around the shop, and I realized the night before I cleaned up the shop fairly well, so there wasn't a lot of stuff on the floor. And I started looking, and I did start seeing some pieces, little squares to larger strips. And I thought, I wonder if this is possible to put it back together. So I gathered up all the pieces. It took a long time, but I said, I'm going to put this back together. So I put all the pieces on the lathe, and like a jigsaw puzzle, I thought, I'm going to try it to put this back together, right? Because I didn't want to lose the piece for these guys. And so, sure enough, like a jigsaw puzzle, it started to go back together. Well, it's the second view of the same thing. It blew the whole top off. You can see where I had a nice 1.5" diameter top. The whole top's gone. And so I began to piece the pieces back in. They fit pretty tight, snug. Just
You use regular wood glue?
I used CA glue, combination of the medium and the thin. I used medium first, and then the thin, and saturated it. And over, what's that?
Did you take the nub off the bottom?
When it was wide open on the side, I took a manual chisel and I went. I took a little extra off for extra measure. I got that nut one way or another. And so I thought, I'm going to put this back together. And so over the course of about 20 hours and 2 days, I gradually used all the pieces, and I found all the pieces except one little triangle, which I had to make. And I cut a piece off of the base that seemed to match, and I made a little triangle and fit it in there. But we go to the next one. Little by little, it started to come back together, and go to the next one. You can see I used rosewood dust and super glue. I used a lot of super glue. I actually poured super glue on the inside to have it saturate the inside to really seal those joints. The last thing you want to do is have something come apart later. So I really froze it and put rosewood dust and super glue in the inside voids to reinforce it. And then I sanded it. That's another view of the mess. And then I sanded it on the lathe while I was spinning with a power sander.
Real fast.
Did you just slow
No, I turned it down by then.
When
And I
it
reestablished the 2-inch diameter opening. What's that?
broke apart, when it blew up, did you catch, or was it just going to blow up anyway?
No, it actually, my chisel went below the center and it started to whirl around, and it just blew up the rim. It just went woo woo, and just.
So the tool went through the wall.
The tool went through the wall. Yeah, I lost control of the tool.
You tell your customer?
Well, I actually, that's part of the end of this thing. We can go to the next one. And basically, I worked with it to get to the base, to get a nice base. And, you could see the hairline cracks, but it was, at the base you can see, I had to make a piece. I had to make a piece right here to fit in a little wedge. This is a little angle that got really messed up. So each little area I dealt with, and you can still see some of it, but we can go to the next slide.
What's the yellow screwdriver looking thing that's stuck in the base? What was that?
Oh, that's that faceplate has an 1.5" screw center. And so I just drill a hole in the base just to unscrew it. And so now I'm just going to unwind it, and there's a sit in there. And it basically was able to be salvaged. You go to the next one.
You had screws in that plate as well, right?
I
Not
had
just
2.5" inch
the.
diameter or length lag screws into the base. Yeah. And then that's what it looked like when it's finished. And still had a little.
Did you hollow it additionally after you got it together?
Yeah, I put it back together, then I went back through it with a chisel inside to really clean it up and take it down. So I trued up the inside also. Got a balanced piece out of it. And when I went to these, I called the two guys and I said, your piece is ready, but I have a story to tell you. And you know what, I told these guys, I said, I experienced your loss in a way because they had lost half their house in a tornado. And I thought for a couple of days, how am I going to inscribe this to make it meaningful for these guys and have them, maybe they don't even want it because it got blown up. So I thought I'd present it. If they don't want it, I was going to give them that other one. That's from our house. And I took that with me. That's been at our house for a while. And I said, I'll give you this one in exchange. But I said, I experienced your loss because as you lost your house, I was very close to finishing this and I blew it up. And on the bottom, I inscribed from destruction to restoration. and I explained to them what happened. And actually, they were quite moved. They said that makes it even more special. And I still have to give them a picture history of it, but they ended up.
All these photos are on the website now in Chris's personal gallery.
See, because it was a piece for other people, I usually take a photo history anyway. It just happened, the thing blew up, and I was able to capture it blowing up.
So, how was that piece?
That's about 15 years old.
So, that was going to mellow to look like that? 'Cause there's a lot of color.
Right.
So
When cedar is fresh, it's real red.
is any of it going to be able to stay there and finish? It'll keep it? Or it's gonna be
It'll age and end up being a darker red like that.
If you keep it in a dark room,
Yeah, if you keep it in darker, keep it away from ultraviolet light.
Actually, that's something I'm starting to play with a little bit. I think there's some things we're going to be able to do to keep the color you see for the rest of your life.
Okay.
Really?
Some guys in Hawaii used to use sunscreen. They would apply sunscreen over a sanding sealer, and they'd use carnauba wax. You could keep it pretty bright for a while.
We got stuff that we put in paint that goes on aircraft. You see some serious UV at 50,000 feet. Put sunscreen to shame.
Yeah.
Just got to figure out how to get it properly dispersed so we rub it into a piece of wood or put the finish on.
Okay. I'd like to try some of that.
You mentioned the rosewood dust. What does that do?
Rosewood is really hard wood, and it reacts quickly with super glue. So if you have a void, some turners poo-poo it. They say you really shouldn't use a filler dust like that. But for certain areas where you have bark or you have a darker area that you can seal it and clean it up, rosewood dust, if you pack a void with rosewood dust and then saturate it with super glue, I think it looks good. So I use a lot of rosewood dust.
How was it turning after the super glue? Did you notice a
You can't even
difference?
notice a difference, and really, except for when you oil it, that area is a little shiny. It's a little shiny. You have to be careful. If you put glue around a rim, it can give you some shiny areas around the rim.
Turning,
Turning,
is it difficult to turn
No, not really. If you keep your tool sharp. But you're right, it would harden that area relative to the other wood, the natural wood. Like if it's pine, it might be a little harder as it's coming around and you're hitting with a chisel.
Did you put the CA glue directly on the seal?
Yeah.
That causing problems with the finish? With all that
Not if I take enough of the wood off.
stuff? Right.
Right? It will penetrate a certain degree, but then it freezes.
And what kind of finish
I
do you
usually
want?
go down far enough where I don't get a stain. I don't care for a stain. Super
Ever use shellac or anything, or use the CA to
Never have.
What do you like to finish the cedar with? I mean, cedar seems to be,
I use
it either looks too glossy, or if you use something that looks like oil, it's real mushy looking. So I find that it's more challenging to finish than maple.
You're right, it's real soft. I used to, when I was doing a lot of pieces every year, I kept about a 20-gallon vat of oil of Seal it's a tongue oil mix, and I would just soak the piece in the oil. I'd have 3 or 4 pieces sitting in the oil overnight, and it would completely penetrate the wood. And then I pull it out of the oil and let it drip dry on a grill until it got tacky, and then I would just rub it for about an hour until all the oil stopped seeping out of it. And then after a couple days, when it hardened, I would really rub it with 4-0 steel wool to clean up all the oil, the excess oil, the hardness of the oil. And then I would just put it on a buffing wheel with no finish, and I would just get a natural finish. I love the seal cell. That's the only oil I use.
For most of us who don't get easy access to rosewood dust, finely ground coffee works really well.
Yep, I've heard that too. I've never used coffee, but
Put some chard, but is
Yeah.
it before or after it's brewed?
it's probably after.
Fresh beans just boil the hell out of it. You get, it looks absolutely like a regular, once you see sanded, it looks like a real
But dealing with addressing hollow vessels, one thing I would like to do, am I okay to move over here with this?
Yeah.
Okay, move over. People say hollow vessels, typically you're thinking of just a round piece with hole on the top. But a hollow vessel can also be something that has that same diameter hole, but actually allows the bark to move upward and more artistic like that. So that would be a hollow vessel that would have a natural, finished natural edge. You can also do a hollow vessel that uses a lot of the bark, like a cherry burl. This is drying to about 1 inch thick, and I'm not sure how much bark is going to stay on there. I'll try to minimize any super glue to keep it as natural as possible.
So have you hollowed that at all?
Yeah, this is hollow. You can-
Okay. I couldn't see it.
Did you say minimize the super glue?
Yeah.
Why? Why not saturate?
Well, the bark is going to end up being exposed, and so bark that's saturated with super glue doesn't always look so great if you do too much of it. I like to use super glue sparingly in bark areas, unless I'm filling a void, a deeper void. And here's more of just a traditional cherry burl hollow vessel. And these are just roughed out to 1 inch thick with a dovetail. And I'll show, how many people do hollow vessels? A lot of people do them. Okay.
Attempt to do it anyway.
Okay. One thing I have a hard time with is if I have a pretty piece of wood with cross grain, the side grain, this was just going to be a regular bowl. But when I was working with it, it had such a pretty curl on the top. I said, gosh, I don't want to go and take all that out. So I just brought it up like a conventional bowl, flattened that off, and just hollowed it out to capture that top that's real curly. So, this was a crotch piece. There's all kinds of different ways to turn a crotch piece. I actually turned it on its side, and that's the crotch on the top because of the pattern. I just really like that, the finger pattern of the burl or the curl coming over the top. So, and then to give it a little character, I just brought it, give it a little contour. And this is hollowed out to 1 inch thick also.
Is that oak?
Let's see.
How's the trigger on again?
Yeah, this would be running like that.
Okay.
It's still thinner than.
So the pith is where? Above it?
Fifth would be below it.
Above.
Fifth would be below it. But that, and then one thing to consider too, if you're going to do a hollow vessel, if you can identify an interesting void area that might give you an opening into the piece, you can leave a bark area, and then when you finish that out, you'll have a little window into the piece. If it's too big, it doesn't work, I don't think, but if you can leave a small opening into the piece, it's kind of interesting.
On that last bowl that blew up on you, in retrospect, would you duct tape that thing before you try to get that nub off?
You could. I wonder if that, not sure whether that would have helped. It was
This is really your tool.
really dramatic.
It wasn't going to stop the steel from going through the wall.
Yeah, you can duct tape a piece.
But when you do have holes in the side of your bowls, do you saran wrap or do any tape?
I've never done that, but I know people have done that and had success with it. Using duct tape, saran wrap, anything to hold it together. Yep. You can do that, especially if you're going to go real thin with real fine bark inclusions. Here's another, just talking about shapes, basically. If you have a tall piece, and you're going to have a lot of curl, and you want to capture the curl, you do a tall piece. So different shapes for all vessels. I like doing small pieces too. This is a little piece of Hawaiian guava wood. Guava is very, very hard to find. I got lucky with this and traded when I was in Hawaii to get a little piece of guava. It doesn't grow very big. It's a guava fruit tree. And so just made a little hollow vessel out of that. All right. Just a word on safety.
Let's take it back here.
Safety, with a lathe is so important, and in a lot of these conventions, safety it should be a big issue at every meeting. Dealing with spinning wood at high speed, you can really hurt yourself. There were a couple deaths last 18 months. Piece came off and hit somebody in the face. And so just, even in the AW magazine, you see demonstrators that are just demonstrating, or pictures, they're just wearing glasses. And so it sticks out like a sore thumb, like, why aren't you wearing face shields? You know, dust, wood dust is an issue. You have to be careful of breathing any kind of wood dust. So to wear a respirator or I have fans that blow across my lathe, and I have a big fan that blows out to the outside in my wall. And then I have a dust extractor that has a big vent right in front of the lathe. So I'm extracting dust away all the time. Those are just things to be aware of, safety-wise. And fingers, I've had all kinds of issues with my fingers. I had natural edge, ripped the skin right off here because I wasn't wearing gloves. So just by wearing gloves can really save a lot of torment physically if you're in a position to scrape your fingers. This is one of Mike's pieces. Mike, our wood guy. This is this little ambrosia maple. I thought it'd be fun just to go through. I'll just show you the way I do it. It's not necessarily the right way. There are a lot of different ways to turn a hollow vessel.
Speak a little bit about shapes. Shapes are obviously critical. I mean, we a lot of us can turn pieces that are really beautiful on the outside, but if it doesn't have that shape,
Yep. That's a great question. I love shapes. I spend a lot of time looking at a piece to check the curve. Is the curve right on top? Is it coming around just above the tabletop? Pieces like that. This is out of a rare piece of Milo wood from Hawaii. Milo is very hard to get. I wanted to capture a little bit of the heart or the sapwood with the heartwood, so give a little accent to it. In looking at it for me anyway, shape is really the biggest. I love working on the shape, and I want a nice, clean curve all the way through, and I want that curve to come just over the tabletop. So it just looks like it's floating on the surface. And then I like to spend some time
so
on
you
the base.
try to look at it in thirds at all, or
Yeah, work on the base and look at balance, and then look at the orientation. If this center line were down, it would look heavy. So in a hollow vessel, to get a little bit of lift, the idea, I've made lousy ones more often than not, where I don't look at it long enough, I'm in a hurry, and I end up making a squatty piece. This one, I like the wood, so I work to get that lift a little above center, and then I like a little bit high top on it. So it, I don't know, looks like a little flying saucer. But if it's really obvious when it's too heavy. It'll actually look heavy. If that center were down here, that wouldn't look so good.
What wood is that?
This is magnolia. It's magnolia. This is one of my favorite pieces. This is a curly koa piece. I've had this a long time. I actually got this wood in Hawaii. I had a friend that was a tree trimmer in Hawaii. He'd go up at 6,000, 8,000 foot elevation. He'd be cutting large 6 foot, 7 foot diameter koa trees, and he'd cut through these sections, and they would peel open and just be ripped fire curl. Cannot believe how pretty this wood was. We're up in the wind and the trees and the mountains of Hawaii, and he's making these cants. He called them cants. He was going to send them to Chicago for ukuleles, banjos, and guitars. And you just fire, rip curl. So he'd say, well, just pick out whatever you want, make a pile, and I'll give you a quote for it. So I'd work to get the best pieces, make a pile at my truck, and load up, and just paint, and I'd take the wood away. But it was all like this, all absolutely gorgeous wood.
is that a
This is-
woolly wood typically?
No, it's a hardwood, so it's a really highly valued Hawaiian hardwood. They make cabinets, bedposts, bed sets, all kinds of things out of it.
That's koa?
Koa.
K-O-A?
K-O-A.
There's another K-O.
There's a real rare Hawaiian wood called Ko, K-O-U. It's
Right.
black. and that's really amazing wood too.
Do you have anything here?
I don't have any co, but I do have a couple co pieces in my house.
Yeah.
I'll bring them in.
I knew you did.
Yep. So, these are, my wife got a load of mulch. She wanted to get some mulch, and a tree trimmer truck came by and said, well, we just cut a bunch of trees and we have a whole truck load of mulch. Do you want it? And my wife said, yeah, go ahead. Dump it in the back. And she didn't know that half of the truck was wood. There was mulch in the front, wood in the back, so when they dumped all this load in her driveway, she said, whoa, how are we going to get rid of all that wood? So we just left it. We just left it there. And a year later, I started digging through it, and I started thinking, wow, some of this looks pretty good. So it was maple, and it was almost done. It was almost deteriorated. But I ended up getting some pretty fun spalted pieces out of it, because it just aged and spalted in this pile. That's North Carolina maple. Anyway. It's real fun to find an interesting piece of wood. Any other questions on the shape? Or how to approach a shape, balance? One thing that stuck with me from way back at Aramont in 1990, Ray Key, I took him 2 sessions at Aramont, and he would hold a piece up. He'd do a critique at the end of the week-long session, and he would use the analogy that a piece sings when it's right. And the eye can tell whether the piece sings or if it is just ordinary or it's not balanced properly. So ever since then, I always told my wife, I said, I strive to make my piece sing. So when you look at it, it looks right. Doesn't always happen.
So how do you see to work with such small openings?
Pardon me?
How do you tell what you're doing with such small openings?
That's a good question. It's you can hear the tone when you're cutting. When it's real thick, it's really low. As you get closer to the rim, you're gonna get a higher trilly pitch. And so if you do enough of the hollow vessels, you're really just blind turning, but you can ultimately hear your thickness. I'll get down as close as I'm comfortable just with my feel. But then I use these measuring tools. These are specific for hollow vessels. And I'll just go in there and I'll actually measure the wall thickness. Both of these are really all I need to check wall thickness. This just goes under the rim, and I can check right there what the thickness is. So I've gone through a lot of pieces. Actually, you go through them when they're close to being finished. And usually don't go through them at the top. You go through them when they're already hollowed, at the bottom left corner. If you get too aggressive, and you just eat that bottom left corner away. So you gotta have a sense of humor with your woodturn. I have shelves of bowls I just don't want to throw out that are no good. That destroy it. Anyway, I thought I'll just go through the process of how I would make a hollow vessel here. This was a block this morning, and I just rounded it off, but it was just a basic block. I identified the top, looking at the ambrosia and how much ambrosia was on the top. I identified which area I thought might be most interesting when it comes around the top, because that's what you're going to see. And then I took the spur center, after identifying the center, and I just pounded it in with a hammer, just to get a good anchor. You really want to hit it with a hammer or something hard to drive it in so it doesn't fly off. So this is already set for this. Let's take Glenn, how about I take a few cuts here and then you want to take a break at 8 o'clock or
Okay, sure. That's what you want to do.
just take a few cuts here and get this oriented? I'm basically just going to get this round, fully round. I like these Kevlar gloves. It's Kevlar material. You don't like them? Can they catch?
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. The thing I really get scared about when I've got Kevlar and they're moving things, if that Kevlar gets caught on something, it's going to take your hand all the way down to the wrist. I like the thinnest leather.
He just changed his mind on that.
When leather gets hung, it shreds. When Kevlar gets hung, it shows. It's got better tensile strength than steel.
That's a good point. What about
A guy that's coachable.
Learn something new today.
Would I get rid of my 24 pack of Kevlar gloves? Just bought them too.
What about bicycle?
The thing is, if they're Kevlar, why would you need 24?
Great unless you switch tip your finger, which is
Does he wear them out?
Golfing gloves, that's just perfect. It's nice and leather. Exactly. I'll put one on my left hand and things out and the wood coming off.
This is just a 3/8 inch ball gouge.
Yes.
And I use this for so much of turning. This is a 1/4 inch ball gouge. These two can really do pretty much whatever you need. Just to round it, I'll use a 3/4 inch. I'm just going to go for the basic shape right now on the bottom. Some people say cut uphill or cut downhill. I don't really have a firm feel about that. I usually cut in the way that it works the best. If I can cut and it cuts pretty well going in one direction, I'm apt to do that. This way, I'm cutting into the grain, which probably is not the right way to do it. So noticing that, I would probably go from this direction. I'll just establish the base. I measured, this is not my chuck, so I did measure the diameter that I can grab with the stronghold. It'll go as low as 2 inches. So for a small piece, I'll probably just make about a 2 1/8 inch foot to grab onto.
The reason why you decided to put your base toward the tailstock, rather than the stand?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a dovetail that I can flip it around and grab it with the chuck and then take this away. And I'll have access to the top. Basically a two-part where I'm establishing the base in order to gain access to the top.
When you're making your tenon, do you want the jaws to be almost closed for the strongest hold, or?
If it's that's a great question. If it's a larger piece, I'm apt to go with a wider grip, have them more extended. A smaller piece, kind of in relation to the size of the piece, because I'm going to allow the piece to sit on the shoulders of the jaws. And so the wider I go with my connection, the more stability I have when the piece is turning. If I'm going to grip it with a real small diameter foot, I'm not going to have as much stability with the piece.
Would you not just use larger jaws?
You can use larger jaws. Yep. These jaws are suitable for pieces of this size. Probably my Axminster chuck, I usually grip at about 2.5 inch. Just automatically, everything's around 2.5 inches.
If you open the jaws up too wide, you got a gap, so you get a finger buster.
Yep.
Good place to hang a finger.
Exactly. And I've had the jaws where I've had them too wide and actually create a safety. As they spin, their knuckles that sit out. You can't see them when they spin. So that's a good question. You basically just want to have a strong connection, a real stable base at the right amount of diameter in order to hold the piece. Because in cross grain, sometimes that dovetail will break off. It'll just snap if it's too small. I've had dovetails just break right off.
If you go too wide with jaws, you only have 8 contact points instead of having full rounds. That's why generally you don't want just 2 contact points per jaw.
Oh, I would always have 4 contact points. Yeah, I wouldn't go wide beyond having 4 contact points. Let's see, I like this little, I guess that's an 1/8 inch, or an 1/8 inch. With a 1/4 inch, I'll just true this off and then I'll establish my foot at about 2 inches. extended, so I'm getting vibration there. I should really move my tool rest around. That's enough right there to establish the base. And so I'll just use, let's have a real old skew. I love the skew. I'll be really disappointed when it's gone.
Pretty close to being disappointed.
Pretty close, yeah. I wonder if it'll pull out a little bit.
You have to put the handle on the tool.
It's an old Craftsman handle. I don't know if you can see it, but I want this edge here to be a little higher than the area below, because I want it to sit tightly on this outside edge when the chuck grabs it. So that's really all I would do at this point. Sometimes I might begin to work that area there, but for purposes of doing this, I'll just take it off and put it in the flip it around. So you want to take a break and then we'll come back. So on this stage, we establish the foot. This is how I do every hollow vessel. I establish a foot first, between centers. It's a compression fit. I'm just squeezing it in there.
You want to pull that off?
Okay, and I would encourage anyone doing this to take the time and really get your setup the way you're comfortable with it. I can't tell you how many times I've poked my elbow with this point here, trying to not have to take the tail rest off. I think I'm just gonna do a few things and golly, I have poking my elbow. No, I just get frustrated with that. So just take it off and get it out of the way. The robust lathe, if you ever look at the robust lathe, it actually folds down. It has a little attachment, you can fold it out of the way. It's really easy. Really nice. So I'm going to take this spur center out of here, and I'm going to make sure it's clear, have a good grip. Put that in there, make sure it's pressed up tight against the shoulder. And looking at this, I could have probably, well, it looks okay. Okay. You want to get a really good snug fit, but you don't want to over tighten it because there is a risk of it breaking off if it's cross-grained. Especially in hollow vessel, in hollowing, you're getting a lot of torque and a lot of friction on the inside when we start taking this wood out. So I'm just snugging that up so it's really secure. And I'm going to finish the outside shape to a point that I like it. Probably again use a combination of the two sizes. The larger for the larger cuts. Since the grain is running this way, I'm going to cut down. I'm going to cut. Is it downhill or uphill?
Down.
Downhill. go downhill into that. With any cut, and I've talked about it in other demos, if you place your chisel on your hip and use your body as a fulcrum, you get a lot more stability on your chisel versus having it out here or trying to manipulate it with your hand. So just get in the habit of putting it on your hip and then let your body come around. So with this, I just like to make a nice round shape with the center a little bit higher than the center point, just to give it that lift. Just eyeing this, I'm going to bring this curve. I'm more comfortable with the way I do it. I'm more comfortable looking at the curve kind of face on and bringing it around this way now once I've removed that mass. I'm going to use more of a delicate chisel. Working in general terms to get this oriented in the right general shape, and I'll take some final cuts and clean it up. Visually looking at this, I'm aware of my cutting point, but I'm actually, my eyeball is looking up at the contour, so when I'm cutting, I'm actually looking at the top to see the wood that's being removed at the top. Sand and chisel is just sharp.
Talk a little bit about your grind that you have on the tool.
It's probably a 60 degree grind. It's not that aggressive.
There's no, you don't really do the fingernail type grind, longer fingernail grind. Most of them are shorter, I think.
Yeah, shorter. Yeah. I have some larger tools that they're ground back, the wings are ground back. If I'm going to do kind of a pulling side cut, a roughing cut, where you want to get a long cutting surface, so grind the wings back. But these smaller ones, there really doesn't seem to be that much metal to pull back. So just a basic cutting tool. Come in a shape, got the basic round shape. Good enough at this point. I use a Reiki tool. I learned how to do this for a long time. It's a half-inch spindle gouge, and this edge is ground down to give it a vertical cutting angle. And this is, to me, this is really effective. If I tip it just slightly, I can bring it all the way around. I'm just going to finish this upper curve and then begin to hollow. But that, for now, that's the shape, basic shape I'm looking for. The center, the curve is a little higher than the center point. point, I would be, if this were dry and I was satisfied with it, I would use a power sander and maybe just hand sanding, because I don't want it to sand unevenly or have these soft spots sand away faster than the hardwood. So if I took 120 grit sandpaper, just a piece of sandpaper, and just held it on there while it was spinning, it would probably clean that up pretty nicely. I mean, go to 180, 220, 320, 400, I'd be done with the outside until I did the bottom. So for now, though, if I don't sand it, which I won't here, I'm gonna work to get the inside trued up. The first thing I'm gonna look to do is visually establish the opening and get the depth. There's all kinds of different ways you can get the depth. Some people take a drill. What you got? 10 minutes left. Okay. Some people get a drill and they'll just drill a hole, basically taking out the wood to the base. Or you can take a chisel. This is a modified screwdriver. I don't necessarily recommend this, but it works for me. I've just modified the end of the screwdriver. I can drive the screwdriver all the way in and gain that depth. Or see where I am on that. Just visually checking my depth. It's about within a half inch of the bottom, the finished bottom. And while I was going in to gain the depth, I was also hitting some of the side to clear that area a little bit. And I can expand that even further, because now I'm going to begin working from the rim out. But I do need to clear some area so I don't get a big buildup of chips in there.
You know, you're cutting on the push or the pull, right?
Pardon me?
Depending on the push or the pull.
You're cutting on the push. Cut on the pull.
I'm cutting on the, on both actually. I'm driving in with a push and then I'm bringing it back a little bit, tipping the cutting angle slightly and scraping back just slightly. Push, scrape back, push, scrape back a little bit. So now I'm just going to go to the depth and I'm just going to clear out a little more space. Because when I go in with a bigger tool, I'm going to be creating more chips. And that's a hazard. If I get a clog up with chips in there, you know it's going to grab my chisel. I always use you guys all have an air compressor to use for these kind of things? You can bear with the noise for a second. Basically, I established a depth, and now I want to begin to work my way toward the rim. These are not they work. They're not pretty, but they work. So, I want to begin with a medium, and I'm going to start opening that up a little bit. Starts clogging up, I'm going to hit it with the air compressor again. It's still a little more stable. I can go in here with this, running out bathroom stools. Using this tool a little more. I'll show the other end, really angle tool.
Chris, you muscling against that vibration, just letting your arm rock with it?
Letting it rock a little bit so I don't fight it too much. But this is the more physical part of hollowing. And I don't know, does anybody have a better way to, a more, less pounding way to get the chips out? I'll do a little bit more, one more cut with this, and I'll use the angle tool. With a gauge, I use two different types of calipers. I can feel where I am in there, and I can see I'm still an inch and a quarter.
Never fails when I move in the wrong spot.
Here, so with this angle chisel, I'm going to start getting a way of getting some of that wood out of there. And this, you have to be, how many have a tool like that? Okay. You guys have any issues with using it? Or?
No, you don't take it.
You don't use it. You just have to take light cuts. You can't be aggressive with it because it's going to take off. Taking it out because it's going to catch on the stop the lathe versus taking it out and having it grab. These are not the greatest steel in the world, so I have a little diamond sharpener that I would get this with.
I don't want to trip you.
Is that wood still green?
I'll come back
It's
around.
pretty dry, actually. Pretty dry.
Did you make that tool?
Yeah.
You step over, I'll get out of here.
I'm just going to put the ledge on that. And we're going to clean that out. We're not too far off from here. Interested in where I am on this. And with the cutting, I can kind of feel the contour inside.
Chris, you're getting to your final thickness as you go in, and you're not going to come back once you get this.
Right, I'm more working in this area. I'd like to get it as close as I can in this area. If this is still wet or damp, I may not try to get the final thickness right now. Because I can still feel it's a little damp inside. But ultimately, I do want to work in the upper section to get it true, get it really thin before I take out the mass in the block. Just for stability. So I'm just going to try to get that. How are we going for time, Terry? Timing spot? You're pretty good. Okay. Anyway, I'll do one more here. I'll work up in this section just to get this as close as I can. that's the process, and I would just keep doing that and just keep measuring until I get down to my finished thickness. Once I get that established, the outside had already been sanded, inside is true to maybe a eighth, quarter at the most on the size of this piece of size, maybe an eighth of an inch. And take the time to measure it as you go down, flip it around, and then I would do the base. I'd do a nice small foot on the base.
How you gonna mount it and flip it around?
I would use a little jig like this. I would put this in the chuck, flip it around, and I'll put the mouth of the piece, the opening of the piece right over that. And I already have a point for the tailstock, so it'll remount right back the other direction.
That puts a lot of stress on that top. Do you ever use those to go all the way to the bottom, like the rod? I've seen some folks use rods.
Yeah. What's kind of neat, and when I began to learn how to do this, it's so neat with chucks and all the jigs you have these days. Everything's so interchangeable. So basically, you already have a hole, you already have a nice spot right there. And provided I had my thickness where I wanted it, I have my basic shape that's sanded, and the only thing that would need to be done would be finish this foot. And I would just usually put a paper towel. If this were finished and sanded nicely, I put a paper towel here to protect the inside. And I would just put it right like that, and I bring the tailstock up, and I pinch it, and then I would do the base. And this little foot, and then I just, with a chisel, knock off the nub. And then I'd have the finished piece, and I'd oil it. So, and that's really the process for every piece. Larger scale pieces I use the arm braces. How many have arm braces? Okay. For a deeper piece, you can go in to get your depth with that, and you just basically core out a post all the way to the base. And this is the other arm brace to begin with your internal shape, and these work really well for larger scale pieces. And there are a bunch of little options, these little type kind of tools that you can use. Al Basham sells all these kind of tools. So if you're interested in getting some of these, Al Basham has a lot of these. He lives right on Kildare Farm Road in Cary. I'm open anytime. If anyone's interested in coming to my shop or has any questions, I'd love to do things with wind turning and anything I can do to help anybody.
Big house calls?
Make house calls. I just love wind turning. I'm in Andrew.